Welcome to Chair Chats, the podcast from Emory's Department of Medicine with DOM Chair Carlos Del Rio.
Welcome to the Emory Department of Medicine Chair Chat. This podcast is with me, your chair, Carlos Del Rio. This week we have with us Dr. Camille Vaughan. Camille is the director of the Division of Geriatrics and Gerontology, and she recently served as a guest editor for an Emory Health Digest issue, which was dedicated to aging well at any age. Welcome to Chair Chat, Camille.
Thanks for having me. I am excited to talk more about the experience of being a guest editor, as well as how we were able to highlight some of the fantastic work happening across the department and beyond related to aging well.
You know, the Emory Health Digest is really a way that Emory tries to communicate with its community in a non-scientific way. Tell me a little bit about how this collaboration started and how did it progress and how did it get to fruition?
Yeah, so I actually received outreach from Mary Loftus, who serves as the editor for the Health Digest series about a year ago now, asking if I'd be interested in a medical editor role. And I found out subsequently that this was the first time they had actually offered that type of collaborative opportunity to an Emory faculty member. And what an exciting opportunity to be the first person to get to experience that. And I will say also, as a physician and as a clinician investigator, I felt like I was at a place also in my career where I really wanted to learn some skills about communicating science clearly to the general public. I think, especially over the last few years, that's become even more important for us in our role, is to be able to talk about scientific discoveries in a way that helps to clearly communicate those with the general public and members of our community. So I actually, it was a really nice serendipitous event to kind of get that outreach and kind of aligned well with some skills that I also wanted to learn.
Yeah, you actually mentioned something very important that I keep up emphasizing to investigators. It's not enough to present at a meeting. Scientific meeting is not enough to write an article in any journal, including very prestigious ones. We have to do a better job communicating to the public. We have to do a better job communicating our science to the public and explaining it in a way that makes sense to them. I remember, I don't know if you recall the movie Philadelphia, in which, Denzel Washington tells us, is a lawyer, and Tom Hanks is a patient with HIV, and he's explaining what he has. And, they're both educated. Denzel Washington is a lawyer, but in the middle of all the explanation, he stops Tom Hanks. He stops the patient and says, look, explain it to me as if I was a 5-year-old. And we tend to forget that, a lot of times we have to explain it as we were talking to young people. We need to explain science in a simple way. We need to make it personal. And we really also need to make it relevant to individuals. Why is the research you're doing relevant to that person's health, to that person's family's health, and how does it apply to them? I always ask, what is it for me in this research? And that is something that we have to really do a better job doing. And we're not doing as good a job as I would like us to. So I think this is a great opportunity. And the Emory Health Digest, I think, really gives you this opportunity. I read the article and certainly could identify with it. I love how you explain your division's search for generating new strategies to make the golden years of life better, and how healthy aging is a result of a lifetime of wise decisions as opposed to a decision you make when you get to be 60. I think it really is important that we all understand this. So tell us a little bit more about the article and what else have you been up to?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that lifetime of wise choices, and also, recognizing the importance of older adults in our community supporting their continued engagement. And that's another aspect that I was really pleased kind of came through in a few of the articles about, working to highlight the positive sides of aging. I think sometimes there are negative messages about aging, or people talk about how tough it is to age. And that was another message that we wanted to really highlight in multiple articles about ways that as a community we can really highlight the wisdom, the opportunities to focus on learning something new, ways to actually that the later years of life sometimes give you an opportunity even to develop a new interest or share kind of those life experiences with others too. So that was really fantastic. And I'd say some of the other aspect that Mary Loftus really asked me to contribute, and also worked with Peta Westmoss in her office, was to make sure that we were representing the broad disciplines and people doing work in this area across Emory, and because we didn't want to miss anything. So, there we were able, from the Division of Geriatrics and Gerontology, we made sure Madeline Hatney's work was highlighted. It does some really innovative work looking at how partnered dance in particular and the music component of learning dance and moving to the beat may influence cognitive health in addition to balance and mobility. And in addition, we paired that with one of our geriatricians, Diego Remolina, who also has been doing work with one of our faculty in the School of Public Health on how dance-based programs can help, again, with kind of physical activity and staying mobile and active. So that was kind of a nice pairing, and one way that we kind of highlighted both the physician and researcher intensive faculty in the division. Another article highlighted Ugochi Hobanwa, who is our section chief at Grady and leads a lot of our Emory Geriatrics at Grady programs and has been just a tremendous force there in working with Grady Health System leadership to really be a flagship health system in certainly the Atlanta metro area for implementing what we call age-friendly health care, or being a part of the age-friendly health systems movement. And that involves a particular focus on something called the FEMS of age-friendly health systems, which stands for what matters most. And that is a concept of kind of understanding what matters most to an individual, older adult, as they engage in the health system, so that when we're making decisions about the other M's, medications, aspects of mobility, and mind or mentation, so thinking about mood, cognition, as well as risk of delirium in the health system, that we're considering kind of that what matters most as we kind of engage in decision making about those other M's. And Grady has actually been a real leader in implementing that across the health system. So those are some of a few of the ways that this issue kind of highlighted, again, clinical care, innovation, and then looking again beyond even our department, also at some of the other divisions and departments across Emory and what they're doing too.
Yeah, absolutely. I also found interesting how Ted Johnson explained how he visited his aunt at a memory care center, and he got a real life lesson on how improv techniques can improve dementia care and communication. That really hit me in a personal way, because not too long ago I visited my wife's aunt, who is in a facility for aging people in France. And what was really interesting to see in this aging facility is that the French have it right next to a daycare center. And so in one side are the older people, and right side are the very young people, but they come together in the area, in the common area where they play and where they meet. And it's really fascinating to see how the older people really come alive with the children around them and really make contact, that they smile and they find life returns to them. So I think we need to think about better and more innovative ways of bringing joy and bringing that precious moment of this whole circle of life to our aging population. So there are several also contributors that I noticed from other divisions. Tell me about them, and how do they contribute to this issue?
Yes. So we had a really interesting article about supplements and which ones maybe are those to prioritize as we all get older. I think, that's something that there's always a lot of interest in, and we don't always have all of the evidence we'd like to confidently say which supplements are helpful. Our one of our faculty in endocrinology and who's a background in nutrition as well as a PhD, Jessica Alvarez, did a really terrific segment on which supplements really work to help us live well as we all get older, and talked about things like calcium, vitamin D, B12, magnesium, which maybe was one we don't always think about, importance of protein intake. And I think that's, again, another, article that hits high interest, obviously to our community.
This supplement industry is fascinating because it's highly unregulated, and it's worth billions of dollars. And I think this year is close to $200 billion, and everybody, it's like the new thing. Everybody wants to take a supplement. Hear things like, you don't take the measles vaccine, but you ought to take all the supplements. And I'm like, wait a second, they've never shown to be effective. They've never shown to prevent measles, but somehow people feel much better taking those supplements. And I think it's because how powerful this industry has been in really advertising what they.
Yeah, so I think that topic we know is of interest, and it's kind of bringing people back to like where are the experts who don't have kind of that potential gain of financially. That's not why they're invested in this issue. They're invested in that topic because of their, clinical expertise, and making sure we got that highlighted in the issue. So yeah, I hope people will remember to look to kind of these trusted institutions like Emory and other sources where they're not part of that, industry, to make sure that they're getting kind of information that's kind of evidence informed. Yeah. And then we had another really terrific article by Jonathan Kem from Cardiology, who gave our grand rounds this past week as well, talking about how more marathoners are surviving heart attacks. And that one was one that was important, that really highlights how expansion of community awareness of life-saving techniques like CPR has likely been very important in helping that if an event does occur during a long distance run, like a marathon, that you have people ready to step in. And that's probably one of the factors that's been really important. And so we're seeing people, even as they age, able to engage in long distance running for longer in their life. And then I was really delighted to have Professor Vince Marconi from our Division of Infectious Diseases highlighted. Vince has really been on the cutting edge over the last several years of looking at multiple factors, not just individual level factors, but how environmental choices, lifestyle choices, as well as that interaction with chronic conditions. I know, Vince has certainly been doing important work in the area of HIV for many years, but also looking at what are the interactions as people live longer with HIV as a chronic condition now, and, other chronic conditions that can occur like diabetes, heart disease, other infections that may occur. He did some important work around the time of the pandemic as well, and how we help understand all of the different aspects that can influence healthy aging, and really measure that in a way that helps maybe give new targets as well. So that's a really nice article that that also builds on some of the, an aging cell issue that came out last year as well, that he was a co-editor for.
Yes, as you probably are aware, many of us in the area of infectious disease and immunology feel that aging is sort of this chronic low-grade inflammation that occurs. And, the term inflammaging has been coined to talk about how this ongoing inflammation, low-level inflammation, is actually very relevant to the process of aging, and how part of the key is how do we control inflammation? How do we decrease inflammation? And what is the role for things like the Mediterranean diet, for example, in decreasing inflammation, or exercise, or many other things, managing stress, prioritizing your sleep, etc. A lot of really, really cool stuff. Yes, it's a wonderful issue. And I think, I encourage people to read the issue, to look at it. Again, look at Emory Digest, and you can find the summer 2025 edition and in online, and look at it. It's really fantastic. I want to commend you, Camille, for doing this. I know it's a lot of work editing an issue like this, and I really appreciate you doing this. What else is happening in your division? What are good news from this year?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, we're really pleased to find out that Ugochi Obanwa, who I mentioned earlier, was highlighted this year by the Atlanta Business Chronicle as one of our 2025 Healthcare Champion Awards as an Innovator of the Year in the Senior Health category. So it's nice not only to be trumpeting her efforts within our community, but also to see Atlanta, trumpeting those efforts across the metro area as well. So I mentioned her earlier, and we were really, really proud of that recognition of her continued efforts with Grady Health System partners. Madeline Hackney also mentioned, and one of the things that was really exciting, Madeline, as I mentioned, is really interested in not just the partner dance influence, but also how music, which is, an inherent part of kind of the dance experience, may also influence both, kind of brain health and mobility. And so she actually partnered with one of our faculty in music at Emory, Laura Emery, also named well for her role at in our institution. And they were awarded a National Endowment for the Arts research grant, which, the National Endowment for the Arts is obviously known for a lot of their different funding mechanisms, particularly for arts programs. But this was actually a research grant. And one of the areas of focus that they funded was to permit Dr. Hackney and Dr. Emery to bring together a group of older adults living with Parkinson's disease along with younger adults in the Atlanta area to work together in a dance program and talk to each other about how that experience influenced their conceptions about aging and disability, like living with a condition that's progressive like Parkinson's. And so as you were, talking earlier about that multi-generational interaction being really key to help us all age well, we were really delighted to see that opportunity funded also by the National Endowment of the Arts here at Emory with Dr. Hackney's work. And then, yeah, go ahead.
It's really, really fascinating what Madeline does. As you well know, she was a dancer before she went.
That's exactly right.
She really brings not only her prior job, her passion, her love for music, for dance into her work, and she's really integrated in an amazing way. So it's fascinating to see what she's doing, how she's bringing two of her loves, research and older people, and music and dance together and creating some fascinating work.
I agree. I mean, that's one of the aspects I think also about being at a place like Emory that just helps us do more because we're, working across the different colleges and disciplines and able to bring kind of that team science approach to these really complex issues and move things along faster than we would if we were doing things on our own. And yeah.
Now you also published a study recently that your team that you led at the VA. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, this was a clinical trial that we had was funded by the VA to understand if behavior-based treatment for urinary symptoms that are really common and burdensome in the context of living with Parkinson's disease would be as effective as drug-based treatment. So this trial was funded during the pandemic, which of course was very disruptive, and it was really amazing to see our participants, particularly, again, all of our participants are living with Parkinson's disease, and to have their commitment to volunteer for a research study, particularly during that time, to inform care for others who will come along behind them was really inspiring. We ended up demonstrating that behavior-based treatment, and this involves learning pelvic floor muscle exercises and learning a technique to put off the need to go to the bathroom when you get a strong urge. And that's a common issue that happens in the setting of Parkinson's disease and in other people as well. But when we taught that technique, we ended up seeing similar improvement in urinary symptoms in people who were randomly assigned to that behavior treatment compared to an FDA-approved drug that is commonly used. And that we hope will change clinical care guidelines. Right now, in the setting of Parkinson's disease, those behavior techniques are not considered to have enough evidence to include in clinical care guidelines. And this is the type of study that will change clinical care guidelines for people living with Parkinson's disease. And it was published in JAMA Neurology this summer. So really pleased to have those results to share.
Yeah, tremendous work. And I think, again, when you produce work that impacts guidelines, you really are transforming medicine and you really are advancing the field because you're impacting people beyond the populations you serve. It really goes at a national or international level. So before we wrap up, I want to ask you what else is happening at the Emory Center for Health in Aging. I know you're also the director, but tell us what's happening there.
So we were so fortunate to have additional investment from Woodruff Health Sciences this past year to offer some additional pilot grants. We've had 3 rounds of pilot grants over the last 4 years, which really fuels innovations from our early career faculty to give them a little bit of funding to get some early results that help lead to larger grants. This past year, one of our awardees, who is in the middle of her project right now, is Dr. Bhagama Tatanji from Infectious Diseases, and she works with Dr. McConey that we mentioned earlier, and will be looking at potential genetic factors that may influence treatment response for people living with HIV who have participated in cognitively based compassion training, which is a program that's been studied here at Emory as well. So we're really excited about seeing those results and kind of aligns with some of the work we were talking about earlier about holistic ways that we help people who are living with chronic conditions age well. So that's one that's underway. We also just found out a few weeks ago that one of our projects from last year that was led by Dr. Louise Hecker, who recently transitioned from Emory, but was one of our investigators in the pulmonary division, as well as Dr. Ali Janjarabi, who's in Emory Department of Family Medicine and works in palliative medicine. They published results from their project last year that's suggesting that a psychedelic treatment, they use psilocybin, in a mouse model of aging seemed to improve the lifespan of the lifespan of those animals, as well as improved some aspects of aging in mice, which one of them that was most noticeable was hair growth. So those findings were picked up by the press and received some nice coverage this past summer. And Dr. Zarabi just found out in the last few weeks that Emory will be part of a consortium funded by NIH to begin to understand how psychedelic treatment might be a part of the treatment for chronic pain in older people. And that'll be a multi-million-dollar award across several institutions. And so some of that funding has directly informed that direction. Again, just some really nice examples of how just a little bit of seed funding can really accelerate the careers of these early career faculty.
Well, that's fantastic. Lots of things are happening. I want to thank you for joining me today. I want to congratulate you, and I want to also wish everybody a healthy aging. We need to be thinking about our future, and we need to be, we have the life expectancy is not what it used to be just maybe 50 years ago, right? 100 years ago, we used to live when we were to the age of 40 or 50, and now 70. What's it? The median age in the U.S. is 75. Median lifespan is about 75. It's dropped some, but in some countries it's much higher, right? I was on the phone today in a Zoom meeting with somebody, a scientist, who's 101 years old, and he's still participating in meetings. He's still giving his opinion. He's still talking, and he has energy and intelligence and experience that is hard to beat, quite frankly. We all need to be taking care of ourselves, and I want to thank you and your team and everybody at the Center for Aging for all the work you do. And thank you very much for joining me. And thank
Thank
you
you.
for listening to this podcast. Again, I'm your chair, Carlos Del Rio, and I look forward to having you join us at another episode.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Chair Chat, the podcast from Emory's Department of Medicine. For more information, visit medicine.emory.edu. Thank you so much. We hope you'll join us next time for Chair Chat.